about how, you hold him and pet him and stuff, but still for generally, we like to stick just down his back like this. He won't hold on to you like this, I'll twist him around, you'll hold him like you did Zoe. It's just easier to get him out of the basket like this, so he'll wrap his two back legs around you first, and then you'll just support underneath his booty. Grab some snackies here in case we get hungry. Dash is 10 months old now. Probably closer to 10 now. But he came from the same facility that we got Zoe from. Was raised in the same way. But there's a lot of differences between the two. And you can see he's a lot darker right now. He will lighten up. He won't be dark like that forever. When they're first born, they're real dark chocolatey, mocha colored like that, but they lighten up over time. Yeah, I think sometimes he forgets how long his tongue is because he leaves it sticking halfway out like that all the time. So cute.
I never got to see you two.
So you got to interact with all three of the sloths.
I know, I didn't know, yeah.
So Dash has shorter encounters right now. He just does 20-minute encounters at a time. And he's worked up now to the point where you can book 3 back-to-back encounters with him and have him for an hour. But then that's all he does at one time. None of our sloths encounter for more than an hour at a time. And then an hour or 2 hours total throughout the day. And then they're fully done. And that's if they're fully booked. Yeah, he's a lot softer than even Zoe is. They came from the same place. They have different mothers and different, genetically they're very different, but they're from the same background.
How much did you say he weighed?
About 5 pounds.
So tiny.
He's a lot smaller. He doesn't move around as much either. He just snuggles in. He's already got his eyes closed. And I can take pictures and stuff for you too if you want me to. Did you wake up, buddy?
No, he hurt you. Oh, cool. You can all look over here and pose. Follow him. Pretty cute.
Yes, you've pretty much got the whole spiel now of everything
I know,
we've talked
like I
about.
know everything.
I'm racking my brain trying to think about
Oh,
what
you're
we
good.
have not talked about.
Hungry?
I feel like half the time I'm a professional chef for these guys. I feel like I'm just chopping up veggies all day long.
She's good. She's good.
Doing what I'm doing with him. He gets so curious, especially if that door opens up. He about breaks his neck trying to look back at it.
I just think they're so cool. I always love them.
Yeah. opportunity for people to get their sloth fix, if you will,
Yeah.
somewhere like this where the sloths have been ethically bred for this, to be ambassador animals and to, you know, enjoy this type of interaction, and not feel like they could go and support the practices that's going on down where they're native to right now, in Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, stuff like that. The natives in the area just see the sloths as a way to make income. They'll go out, if they know that a cruise ship is going to be coming and boarding, they'll go out and take a sloth from the rainforest and them get in a bucket of bleach, scrub off all of the moss and algae that's on their backs. Sometimes if they get a sloth that is more, you know, fighting and not wanting to be handled, they'll actually pull that sloth's teeth, because that's not good for business if they're getting bit. And it's really unfortunate the practices that go on down there. A lot of people just aren't aware. If they were, obviously they would not support something like that. But they don't present it as something like that. They present it as, oh, he's been out there for years and he just hangs out in the same tree all day, every day. Yeah. So our goal is to just offer kind of another place where people can come that's more local. We get their sloth fix here instead of supporting the businesses down there. The conservancy agencies down there have been doing a good job recently of enforcing more laws, rules, and regulations on holding and handling wild sloths, or any sloths down there, which are good for the people that have been doing it the wrong way, but not so good for places that have done it the right way. So there are places down there like sanctuaries, where they've been trying to rehabilitate sloths that were injured from the rainforest and put them back into the rainforest. They've shut down a lot of places like that too, if they're open to the public, for people to come and like see how they rehabilitate sloths and what the sanctuary looks like and things like that, because they can't just put rules in place for some people and not all people. They've shut down those as well.
How often does this one eat? Does it just?
He's just a snacker. He eats all day, every day. I mean, he gets a set amount of food for breakfast and dinner, but then all throughout the day, he'll, you know, people all the time on their downtime will come in here and want to see the baby, and I'm like, well, you want to give him a snack? So it works out for him. I try my best that I'm not the only person that feeds him, because they do tend to kind of pick their people, and I don't want him to attach so much to me that I can't do encounters with him, because he already a lot of times will turn around and look at me the whole time while he's supposed to be holding on to somebody else. Making that, buddy. Some scientists actually speculate that when they're looking like that, upside down, that's actually their way of looking right side up. And it makes sense. Not all scientists agree with it, but it does make sense, because everything else that's inside of a sloth is geared to be upside down. Everything from their circulatory system, their digestive tracts that just have specific one-way valves to only allow food to go into the stomach and not back out when they're hanging upside down. the connective tissue that holds everything together in between and everything else, so it makes sense that their eyesight would be like that as well. When they're on the ground, if they've fallen out of the tree or what have you, they're very unstable and unsure of their surroundings because, they're not used to being upside down.
Yeah.
But their circulatory system is also really specific in that it can adapt to change really easily. So sloths don't always just hang upside down with all fours. Occasionally they'll let go. I don't know if Flash showed you his cool trick earlier where he can let go with his front feet and extend all the way down just by his two back feet. And when he's doing that, his circulatory system can adapt to that so that it doesn't allow all the blood to go rushing down to his head and still supplying blood all the way down to his toes. Whereas ours does not do that.
Right.
If I do a handstand, all that blood's going to rush down to my head pretty quickly. And if I were to try to do a handstand and swallow something and eat some food, it's probably going to come back out on me. Because I have all people have two-way valves. We have the ability to vomit. Goat is hoarse from dying so much. Somebody said the other day that we should offer sloth naps where people can pay to come and just take a nap with sloths.
Great.
I feel like I probably need more than 20 minutes.
Yeah. That's not long.
And I don't think that we exactly have enough room in this room to put a lazy boy in here, so.
Yeah. So sweet.
Where'd you say you were from again?
Mount Carmel is near Kingsport. Like Johnson City.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What do you do up there?
So I'm a nurse, a dermatology associate.
Okay. My best friend is trying to get to that point in life.
I've been there for like 18 years. So.
Are you like a nurse practitioner or?
I'm an LPN.
Oh,
so
okay,
licensed
yeah.
nurse.
She's about to do she's doing her bachelor's degree, she just got accepted to, master's program,
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
That's okay.
I don't know, I'm trying to be a vet, so I'm on a totally different path than her.
That was always my dream job, but yeah, I just don't know if I could do it.
I think that everybody has that thought for at least some portion of their lives. But everybody loves animals. I mean, you gotta be backwards to not appreciate animals, but it takes a lot more than just liking animals and liking to be around animals to be a vet. They don't make as much money too as a lot of people think. They're still a doctor and they still have the same amount of schooling and everything. They've got to know a lot more species than just humans, but they don't get paid nearly as much.
So I don't feel like that's right.
It's not, but I don't see it changing anytime soon.
What is that say? Is that a horse?
It's our camel.
Oh, okay.
It's Prince Ali. He is a Wonder baby.
I was like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, no. If you've ever watched Star Wars,
Oh my gosh.
they get all of the noise that Chewbacca makes from the camel. I think they probably like up pitch it a little bit more because his are kind of higher pitched, but, and Humphrey, you haven't heard him yet, it's just Ali right now, but Humphrey's moans are a little bit higher. And I'm sure they're probably not called moans, but I don't work with camels, so I don't know. Vocalizing.
I've never heard that sound before.
He hears it all day, every
Yeah, he's
day.
probably like, I'm done with this.
Somebody said the other day that they thought it was a soundtrack we were listening to, and I was like, girl, I wish it was a soundtrack so I could turn it off, but no such luck. Yeah, they learn, they don't have very good eyesight, he may not be able to determine what I'm doing or what I've got over here, but he knows I'm working on something from the fridge. This bowl of food is for him, it may occupy him if he wants it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. He's got such a rough life.
It's so tough. Still checking around.
This is a hair moving around. That's the best stuff I got for you, Val. This is too big for your tiny little mouth.
Want some more?
Alright, that is right at time for us. His encounters are just 20 minutes, so. But of course, right as he starts to be interested in the food.
I'll give you back.
Now, this last one was a little bit more boring with not as much information. I think you've heard about all of it, so.
I feel like I learned a lot.
Head out here one more time and sanitize our hands for the last time.
Anything, boy?
Dash, he'll hold on to you around your torso. He's just wrapped onto my arm right now because that's where he's most comfortable with me. But if you want to have a seat in the blue chair, I'll twist him around. He'll wrap his legs around your torso, and then you'll just support him underneath his booty. And then this is just a little bit more. Oh, he's gonna be looking for food. Don't let him get a hold of your hand. I'm working as quick as I can here for him.
Here, what you looking for?
You may be interested in it. I have to hold it near him. They have really poor eyesight, but they can smell pretty well. Their sense of hearing and sense of smell is heightened because of that.
His name is Flash?
Dash.
Dash, okay.
Yeah. Flash is our bigger one. He's 6 years old.
You just follow me around, buddy.
So we got Dash from a breeder that conditioned him from a very young age to enjoy this type of interaction. But if you were to try to have an experience similar to this with a wild sloth that had been raised completely differently, it would go completely different. It would be essentially the difference between holding a house cat and a feral cat. So you'd probably walk away from that. It's quite different. That's a kangaroo.
Oh.
I think that was a sneeze. Dash is a two-toed sloth. It can kind of be confusing because when you say two-toed, you think of their back feet, but he's got 3 on the back. All sloths have 3 on the back, but it's the front feet where they differ in the amount of toes they have. So he's got 2 on the front and 3 on the back. And to keep a 3-toed sloth in captivity is pretty difficult because their diet can't really vary much from the leaves of the sarcopia trees. And those, only really grow in the rainforest. They've been trying to get some groves growing in southern parts of Florida and California, but haven't had great success with that just yet. And if they do, then that would be, changing the ability to be able to keep 3-toed sloths, but until then, we're not able to. The 2-toed sloths, we can vary their diet a lot more, where he's eating a mixture of brown rice, shaved up sweet potatoes, and a really high quality dog food that's been soaked in water and then mixed into it. That's where it gets its protein from. But in the wild, they would get their protein from a variety of small bugs and insects. That's where they get their protein.
Sounds going again. I think my arm to get up. See?
So you guys staying in the chuck wagon?
Yes.
Okay. How you like it? Yeah. Definitely a different experience. Where are you from?
Morristown is just like 40 miles west of Hartsville, or
Okay.
east of Hartsville.
Yeah. Where'd you hear about us?
My husband was looking some stuff up online. I don't know if he knew about it from years ago. He said there was some things that maybe was a little different. And it was just like an area, something around here, kind of close that he was thinking of. But found it online. I love critters, so that's right on my alley.
You had any other encounters today?
We just rode horses for like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
All the sunsets, the sloths in my spirit.
Get that one a lot.
Oh my Lord, that's the best job ever.
It's pretty great. My end goal is to make it into vet school, and so with the title of sloth keeper on my application, hopefully
That's awesome.
make me stand out just a little bit.
Great job, anyway. So how old do they have to be before they can be away from their mama?
So they're weaned around 4 or 5 months old. The And if you think about a sloth, they move really slow. Everything is a really slow process for them because the leaves that they eat are extremely low in caloric content, and it takes calories to be able to create ATP, which is their energy source. And because of that, you know, they don't really have a whole lot of energy to be able to be, you know, moving around or doing things that are energy expensive. And having a baby and, you know, keeping that baby on them and nursing them and things like that are pretty energy expensive for the mother. So the two-toed sloths only keep them for around 4 or 5 months. The three-toed sloths, they keep them for a lot longer, up until about a year, and then they're done. But the facility that we got them from basically conditioned them from a very young age to enjoy this type of interaction. So the mothers were clicker trained to know that when she heard that clicker noise, she was going to get a little treat, and then the breeder was going to borrow her baby while still standing next to her for just like 30, 45 seconds, and then give baby right back to mom before she's even done with her treat. So mom's never stressed out, therefore baby's never stressed out, and it's always a positive interaction with, you know, with the people that are interacting with the sloths. So by the time that the baby is completely weaned of the mother's own choosing, and it is completely of the mother, it's never influenced by the breeder at all. And when that mother weans that baby, baby goes from mother being the source of comfort to humans being their source of comfort. So he has a separate ambassador program, which is what both Dash and Zoe are. They are ambassador sloths. They pass that final ambassador test that prove that they do genuinely enjoy and actively seek human interaction. And then the babies that occasionally he'll have a few that go through the same program, but they just kind of tolerate being held by people but don't really actively seek it out like all the other ones do. And those sloths would end up just going to a facility where it's kind of like a zoo and just be a lot more observation, not so much hands-on.
So does he stay here at night by himself? Or?
So right now he stays, this basket is what we take him down in from the house. He stays at the main house overnight. Zoe did the same thing up until they're about a year old. They stay at the main house and they stay in the owner's bedroom. So they're up there in a really large bird cage where we set the entire basket into it, and right above him are branches and everything that he can climb onto if he wants to. And he does occasionally at night. That's when they're most active, is during the night like that. But otherwise he's staying in the basket most of the time.
So precious.
You see pictures of them a lot, but in the wild you see a lot of moss and algae and stuff like that on them that is growing, and they do have an entire ecosystem that lives on their back in the wild. So to be considered an ecosystem, you have to have a living, breathing being in that, and that for the sloths are moths. So there is a really long scientific name for those moths, but for our purposes they're just called the sloth moth because that is the only place that specific moth will live in the entire world. They can't even just live in the environment flying around. They have to be on the back of the sloth. And so they require the sloth to come down to the same spot every time to use the bathroom. They go down the same tree, same side of the tree, to the same pile that they always go to, so that those moths can come down off of the sloth and lay their eggs in the sloth's dung pile. So last week's eggs are this week's larvae, and this week's larvae are next week's moths. So it takes 3 trips down there for the original eggs that were laid to turn into moths. And they will crawl back up onto the sloth when they're down there doing their little potty dance down there at the rainforest floor. So obviously it benefits the moths because it's a transportation to and from their breeding ground, as well as they're living in their food source. So they eat the moss and algae that grows on the back of the sloth. So obviously it benefits the moths, but it also benefits the sloths. It is a mutual symbiotic relationship. So the sloths will actually eat a portion of those moths, and that's their protein source in the wild. They have really low protein requirements, and just a few of those bugs are enough to meet that for them. They'll also eat a small variety of bugs and insects that are on the leaves that they're consuming, and most of that comes from the moths that are living on their backs. But the most important part of the entire relationship is that they'll actually lick up a portion of the moth's waste that's on the fur of the sloth, and when the sloth licks that up, they get the bacteria in order to digest their food. So we use an enzymatic process, and we're born with those enzymes, but the sloths are not born with the bacteria in order to digest their food. You may want to spin your necklace around the back so he doesn't get a hold of that bigger piece, or put it down in your shirt or something. But they have to get that bacteria from somewhere, and they first get the first bacteria actually from their mother on day 3. So they will climb onto the chest of the mother and lick her in the corners of her mouth, because when she eats, her saliva will bubble up with the leaves that she's eating, and the baby will lick that up and get just a little bit of mom's bacteria from her gut and start to develop its own bacteria colony. So then in the wild, they'll pretty quickly start to form that moss and algae. They'll get those moths that start to live in their fur, so they kickstart that bacterial process a lot quicker than in captivity, because we don't have the moths here. But it takes a little bit longer, and they'll get that bacteria colony up and running eventually, and once they do, they'll keep that bacteria colony the rest of their lives as long as temperature requirements are good. So in the wild, in the rainforest, overnight temperatures can drop, and the sloth cannot maintain their own body temperature. So if the outside temperature drops, the sloth's temperature drops, and it's not that we worry about it being hypothermic, it's that we worry about that bacteria starting to deteriorate. And if that happens for a wild sloth, all they have to do is just groom themselves some more, they lick up some more of that bacteria, and they're all good. But in captivity, if the temperature drops, they don't have any of those moths to be able to kickstart that bacteria growth again. So the bacteria growth that they get from a baby that they've established is the same bacteria they'll have the rest of their lives. It's similar for us, we'll keep our good gut microbiome as long as we don't ever take antibiotics. If we take antibiotics, we can, eat some Greek yogurt or, probiotics or something like that to get it kick-started again. But if their temperature drops and they lose some of that good micro, flora and everything, their bacteria, they don't have a Kroger that they can go to and get some, probiotics or something like that, and they don't really make any type of over-the-counter synthetic bacteria for that for them to be able to get that back up. It's really only from the moths that live on the back of the wild sloth. So it's a really sensitive system, and if something like that were to happen where the temperature dropped much below 75 degrees, that would be really bad news for the sloth, and they would not live for very long after an experience like that. So that's why we always tell people that owning a sloth as a pet is an absolutely terrible idea. The sloths that we have here are not pets, they are ambassador animals. They serve to be education for the public. And while there's no necessary licenses or registrations that you have to own a sloth, there is no reputable breeder out there in the U.S. that would sell one of their sloths to a member of the general public. You have to really know what you're doing for a breeder to be able to sell you one of their sloths. The sloths that we got Dash and Zoe from, he's basically like the #1 breeder for the entire U.S. for all of the zoos and stuff like that. He has a really big program that he has. He has just regular sloths like Flash, where we don't really interact with him a whole lot. We don't hold him, we just feed him and pet him and stuff like that. But then he has the ambassador program where he raises the sloths to be like this. Our goal with having the sloth encounters like this, where you can actually hold them and pet them and interact with them like this, is that people will get their sloth fix here where they've been ethically bred for this, or at a facility similar to this in the states where the sloths have been bred in captivity. But a lot of times what people will do is go down to places where they're native to and have a sloth encounter, a sloth experience down there. And oftentimes those sloths have been taken from the rainforest, and we've already talked about how sensitive that ecosystem is on their backs. And what they'll do a lot of times is that the natives will go out and find a sloth that looks kind of docile or looks younger and doesn't have as much fight in it as some of the older ones do. And they'll take those, they'll dunk them in a bucket of bleach, scrub off all of that moss and algae, get rid of all those moths, pull their teeth, and then put them in a little roadside petting zoo. And after an event like that, that sloth's life expectancy is about 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really unfortunate, and they obviously don't portray it as something like that. They portray it as, oh, this has been my pet for years, or he's just lived in this tree his whole life here in my backyard, never went anywhere. But in reality, it's, wild sloths that have been taken. So, and actually what started the breeding program for the breeder that we got the sloths from, he's been doing it for over 30 years. He's actually a veterinarian. And what started his breeding program was he was working down in Costa Rica or Guatemala, somewhere they're native to, and trying to do rehabilitation efforts to get the sloths back out into the rainforest, ones that had been electrocuted. A lot of the issues with the sloths is that they'll be climbing on a telephone pole trying to cross the street and go over and touch another telephone pole, and that's when they're electrocuted. So they were trying to rehabilitate those sloths, the ones ones that were not able to be rehabilitated went into his breeding program. That's what started it over 30 years ago to be to where he is now. He's a sweet baby, that's for sure. And he would too if we let him, but we do limit the amount of time that we spend with our sloths just because, you know, we limit it to where none of our sloths encounter for more than 2 hours a day total, and that's if they're fully booked. So they'll have, the most they can have at once is an hour, so he can have 20 minutes back to back booked, and he's done for several hours until later in the afternoon. So this is his last encounter for this morning, and then he won't have another encounter until 4 o'clock, if he even has any this afternoon. And so we keep it like that so that they look forward to every next encounter and not, oh, there's more people here to hold me. Because if we booked them back to back to back to back, you know, too much of a good thing can get old, and we don't want it to ever be, you know, not something that they enjoy. If we keep it enjoyable for them, then it's enjoyable for us.
Maybe you're just in awe of it, you know?
A lot of people will rock them, and it's fun to rock them back and forth, but some people get really excited and they like bounce them, and the sloths are just looking at me like, what's going on?
They have pretty sharp teeth.
They do. They don't have any teeth in the very front, but they do have 4 really sharp canines, 2 on both sides. And then their molars are actually all pointed, so they're not flat like ours are. The top 2 kind of come together like this, and then the bottom one goes just right in between that. So they kind of grind up their food every time they open and close their mouth instead of chomping it up like we do. Because if you think about their natural diet, it's just leaves of the sarcopia trees that they live in. And those are already really flat, so it's a lot easier to grind those up than it is to smush them. And their digestive tract is extremely slow. It takes like 30 days to digest everything that's in it from start to finish. So the first bite of food that he took today is going to be another 30 days before that comes out the other end. And because of that, they kind of have like a little internal off switch. They can just flip as soon as their system tells them, hey, I'm getting full. They stop eating for, you know, the next several hours or the rest of the day until their system tells them, all right, you need to start eating again.
They just don't burn much energy. do they?
Exactly. Well, they don't have a whole lot of energy to burn. The diet that they eat is really low in calories, and it takes calories to be able to create energy. They don't have a whole lot of energy storage to be able to be doing a whole lot, which is why scientists had originally thought they slept for upwards to like 20 plus hours a day, but they actually changed that recently to be a little bit less because after they did a little bit more research up close, a lot of the times they thought they were sleeping because they were just hanging there, had their head, you know, real close to their legs. They thought they were sleeping. Their eyes were actually open and they were aware of what was going on. They just don't have enough energy to be able to be climbing around, exploring, and doing random things. So if a sloth is not actively eating or sleeping, they're just hanging there resting and digesting their food.
What's his name? I think he's not this big.
He may not be able to look at me and see who I am just by looking at me, but he knows my voice and he knows the different inflections and things that I put behind what I say. Holy. Is that you that's stinking? Yes, sure enough. Goodness gracious, girl.
How old's that one?
About 7 months. Shoo. You stinky. Good night. I'm gonna empty this out. Alright. Well, our time is up with Dash, so I'll go ahead and get him from you.
I love that.
got some pretty good pictures in there, so. We'll head out and we're gonna sanitize our hands one more time before we head back up to the pavilion. Do you have any other encounters today?
Yeah, I think we're actually feeding the baby kangaroos.
Okay, cool.
At some point in
Yeah,
time.
so that'll start down here.
Yeah.
You stay there. We'll head over here, I'm gonna sanitize